Mitch Tannenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today for the security news update for the week ending June 18th, 2023. In the Security and Privacy Alerts Department, CISA has released Binding Operational Directive 2302. This is an interesting directive and something we've recommended to clients for a long time. What CISA is saying is disable any management interfaces on your network gear, whether it's switches, routers, firewalls, whatever, that's exposed to the internet, because people like to hack them. What they're saying is A, make it internal, B, put it on its own separate network so that even internally, if a user's workstation is compromised, that doesn't mean that your management interface is compromised. And C, as an alternative, you can go off and use zero trust principles to protect the management interface, which is exposed publicly, but only if you have a separate control plane that would allow you to go off and ensure that those zero trust principles are being enforced. So that's a big challenge. A lot simpler for most organizations. Just remove the management interface, force the few people that need to go off and access that management interface to VPN in or be inside the facility. They've given executive branch agencies, CISA has 2 weeks to go implement this. So obviously there's something going on. They're not saying what's going on, which is not unusual, because they don't want the bad guys to understand how much they do or don't know. But I would recommend that if you're not already doing this, and as I said, we have recommended our clients to do this forever, that this would be a great time to go do that. Next, research, and we see these a lot. Researchers say that owners of Zyxel firewalls should assume that their firewalls are compromised, if not already patched. Now, I don't think that there's very many enterprises running these firewalls, at least I hope not. But do you know what your employees are running at home? That's really a bigger problem. And have they ever been patched in the history of the firewall? And my guess is the answer to that is no. If you're hoping that their ISP is going to patch their firewall for them, I think you're being a bit optimistic. I don't think that's happening. And that assumes that you actually have a firewall at your employee's home. So that's a bit of a mess. If you need help with that, please let us know. I could have a whole issue on just that by itself, and I might actually do that. Next, Microsoft has rolled out patches for Azure Bastion and Container Registry. The good news is that since these are cloud services, they can sort of snap their fingers and roll out the deployment worldwide, which is what they did, which is really a great thing. On the other side of that, however, is Progress Software, and they're turning into a bit of a punching bag. First one I'm reporting about right now is their Telerik ASP Ajax user interface. It is vulnerable. It is being actively exploited. If you're using it, you need to patch it now. It's just not been a great week for Progress Software. In the legislative and legal department, there's a bill that's been introduced. We shall see where it goes. That would prohibit the export of U.S. data to unfriendly countries. I wish they would, include friendly countries and internal to the United States, but that's not politically as attractive. And I'm sure that the data broker industry, since their customers are all over the world, are going to fight this tooth and nail. But you got to start somewhere. Next, the federal acquisition regulation that bans contractors from having TikTok installed on any computer, government-owned, contractor-owned, employee-owned, that is used in support of a contract. That FAR has been published. The FAR number is 52.204-27, goes into effect June 2nd, meaning it's already in effect. It also says that all IDIQ contracts must be amended to include this FAR clause, and any other contract which is being modified or extended needs to include it as well. Not a big surprise there, except for the point about this also includes employee-owned devices. So that's going to be a challenge for most organizations. Again, if you need help, let us know. And as I said, it's not been a good week for Progress Software. After hundreds of companies announced that they've been hacked by virtue of a bug in their Progress's MoveIt software, there's now a second and third bug and patch for this. But the companies, all over the place: BBC, British Airways, Shell, government agencies, Department of Agriculture, Department of Energy. We're seeing it all over the place. It's just a bit of a disaster, dumpster fire for sure, and will go on for a long time. And we won't even understand the scope of the breach for a long time. Also, in the breaches department, we're seeing the lingering side effects of ransomware attacks. 2 hospitals in rural Illinois, I believe it is, including one that's been in operation for 120 years, are now closing, along with their clinics and other services, meaning that these companies are operating hospitals in rural settings. Means people will have to drive 20 or more miles to get to another healthcare facility. Potentially loss of life. Obviously, rural hospitals are really challenged because they don't have the money. These 2 hospitals that are closing are closing. They're only 40-bed hospitals or something in that approximate range, and they just don't have the money to go off and do what they need to do. So it's a real challenge. But that's the real impact of ransomware. It affects, obviously, the community. It affects people's jobs. Now, I would think that doctors and nurses will not have much of a problem finding another job, but it may mean they need to drive more miles. That obviously has impact on families, but the bigger issue is patients. Next, FISA Section 702, which is the part of FISA that allows the feds to snoop on anybody worldwide. In theory, they need a warrant to go off and listen to what they've snooped or read what they've snooped if it involves U.S. citizens, except in cases when it doesn't. But since nobody trusts the feds, both on the left and the right, for different reasons, but nobody trusts them, that particular provision expires every 5 years. It came around after 9/11, and it expires this year. Will Congress renew it? Yeah. The intelligence community would like a clean renewal, meaning no strings attached. That's not going to happen. I'd say the odds of that happening are damn near zero. The question is, how much, what does get attached to it, and we'll have to see. But right now we've got about 6 months, which by Congress time, they renew this on December 29th. That would be fairly typical. Next, the FBI is saying that writing checks is not safe. This is really not news, except what they are saying is the scope of check washing, which is the part where you kind of bleach the name and the amount out of the check and write in your own name and own amount, is seeing a resurgence, which is very interesting. They're saying, if you have to mail a check, mail it from inside of the post office. I would suggest actually using electronic tools instead. They're much safer. And again, if you need help, let us know. In terms of the world of AI, everybody's been saying that AI is going to replace a lot of jobs. We're already seeing this starting. There's sort of 2 categories of jobs, I think, that are going to be low-hanging fruit. One is jobs that are easy to replace by automation. The other is jobs that nobody wants to have. This week, we're talking about debt collectors. And, if you are a company that buys non-performing assets on pennies on a dollar, you would love to have your debt collector be able to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, making calls, sending emails, texts, whatever, to people who you say owe money. Mostly people hang up on these guys and hurl expletives at them and stuff like that. So it's not exactly a fun job. So automating that has some side benefit, except if you're one of the people who lost your job as a result of that. But we're seeing the software companies touting that, that they can, make, 10 calls at once or 100 calls at once or whatever. And, a human being can't do that. So this is gonna happen more and more as AI improves. And lastly, in the security news bite section, another White House cyber official is scheduled to depart this week. That's 2 in recent weeks, and that's going to have some impact on the White House's cyber program. This White House has been very, very active in the cyber world, much more active than any other White House that I can remember. In revisiting past attacks, Atomic Wallet, which is just a piece of software that allows you to store your crypto keys, was hacked. Initially, they said, I believe, $35 million was compromised. Then it went up to 50 million. Then it went up to 100 million. Now it's over 100 million. So this is a big deal. And bottom line is, crypto is software, and software, gets hacked. That's the way it is. So, if you're keeping more than your lunch money in crypto, then make sure that you go off and protect it well. Next, the feds have decided to side with car makers against consumers' right to repair. It's an indication of how crappy the security is in cars right now, as people are putting more and more electronics in it. They're basically saying, if we allow owners to repair their own cars, then we will compromise the safety and security of cars. That's a pretty sad state of affairs. It's probably accurate, unfortunately, but it is a pretty sad state of affairs. One crypto exchange has decided to leave the U.S. after being fined for not following the rules. They basically said, we don't want to be regulated as an exchange, and so we're just going to leave the U.S. market. That's a rather excuse me. That's a rather significant decision to make, but I think they decided that if they actually had to disclose things and tell people the reality, they wouldn't have any business anyway. So they're just going to shut down the U.S. operation. And lastly, a big legal tech firm called CasePoint was breached. Hackers got terabytes of data. That terabytes of data included things like depositions and discovery and all kinds of things like that. So that's a bit of a mess. Clearly, all of that data is very sensitive. But what it does mean is that if you are involved in a law firm on one side or another, that it's important that you understand the security risks. With that, that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, stay safe.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized